Good morning, aspirants. It's 17th of October today, and I welcome you all on today's edition of What to Read in the Hindu newspaper. While going through the articles, we will not only see its relevance with regard to prelims and mains, but we'll also try interlink it with other GS papers as well. I am here to align your newspaper reading as a part of our GS syllabus. So let's get started. The very first article in today's paper that catches our attention talks about Trump and MEA at odds over Russian oil imports. There has been a lot of hue and cry over oil imports, that too in specific from Russia, by Western nations. So they have always asked India to reduce its oil dependence, else they have said they'll put some sort of restrictions on us. So this particular article is relevant with regard to GS paper 2, wherein India's bilateral relationships, effective policy of developed nations on India's interest, and GS paper 3 in energy security and international trade can be linked. The theme that has been discussed over here is India-US differences over Russian crude reflects India's pursuit of strategic autonomy in foreign policy. Thus, we need to balance both our energy needs and global pressure. From prelims perspective, we need to know facts and data with regard to India's crude oil import basket and major suppliers, G7 price cap mechanisms, recent US sanctions and exemptions under CAATSA. For mains perspective, the same article is to be seen through the lens of questions on India's foreign policy autonomy amidst great power rivalry that is we are witnessing in today's time. Impact of sanctions on India's energy security and diplomacy. So this is all about this particular article, the various dimensions, facts and data, everything needs to be read and revised holistically. The next important article that is there in the paper on editorials page, and it talks about early onset of northeast monsoon. So none too soon. So this particular article is relevant with regard to GS paper 1, wherein important geophysical phenomena, monsoons, climate variations can be linked. Also relevant for GS paper 3, wherein disaster management, agriculture and environment can be interlinked. The key theme that has been discussed in this particular article primarily talks about early onset of northeast monsoon over Tamil Nadu highlights changing rainfall pattern due to climate vulnerability, impacting agriculture, water resources, and urban flooding eventually. From prelims perspective, we need to know the concepts related to onset and retreat of monsoon for GS paper 1 geography, regions benefiting from northeast monsoons, IMD's classification of rainfall season. From mains perspective, this particular article is to be seen through the lens of climate anomalies and agricultural adaptation, role of IMD in early warning and preparedness, South India's dependence on northeast monsoon altogether. This is how this particular article is to be seen. Next important article that I found really interesting to read from today's Hindu newspaper is about a reading of revision in constitutional history. And this could be a very potent question from mains as well. In this article, the debate reopens the role of B.N. Rao versus B.R. Ambedkar. Understanding how legal drafting and socio-political vision merge to shape our constitution. But major credit has always been given to Mr. B.R. Ambedkar. And we have hardly read about Mr. B.N. Rao. So this is relevant with regard to GS paper 1, modern Indian history and freedom struggles, GS paper 2, evolution of constitution and making of Indian polity. For prelims perspective, we need to keep this article in our head from the perspective of timeline of drafting constitution from 1946 till 49, committees, major committees of constituent assemblies, key constitutional personalities and their roles. For mains perspective, we have always seen personality-based questions coming into either of GS paper 1 or GS paper. For instance, Rabindranath Tagore's thought versus Mr. Gandhi's Tagore thought. Ambedkar's way of looking at constitutions versus Nehru's way of looking at constitution. Similar sort of question could be asked from this angle as well, wherein comparative contribution of Dr. B.R. Rao and B.R. Ambedkar could be asked. Constitution as a living document, wherein political versus administrative vision can be quoted. Social justice embedded in constitutional morality could be linked. So this is how this particular article is to be holistically seen, read, and revised. The next important article that is there in the paper and that catches our attention is about restoring fiscal space for states. So this is relevant for GS paper 2, devolution of powers and finances between center and state, and GS paper 3, Indian economy and public finance. The key theme that has been discussed in this particular article primarily talks about how cesses, surcharges, and GST design have shrunk fiscal autonomy of state, calling for greater decentralization and fiscal space. From prelims perspective, we need to know about Article 268 to 293, wherein center-state financial relationships has been talked about. What is the role of Finance Commission, GST Council, the differences between the two? Also, are they in direct conflict with regard to finances or not? And vertical devolution formula that has been devised from preceding 2 to 3 Finance Commission and GST Councils. What is the definition of cess and surcharge? For mains perspective, we need to know what cooperative versus coercive federalism in the matters of fiscal policies. Post GST fiscal balance and centers control over tax revenue. What is the need for institutional reforms when it comes to fiscal reforms? This is how this particular article is to be holistically read and revised. And the last important article for the day is about ensure safeguards for Indian carbon market. This is relevant for GS paper 3, environment, sustainable development, climate change, and economy. The key theme that has been discussed in this particular article talks about whether India can decouple economic growth from carbon emission, or if degrowth is the real sustainable pathway or not. From prelims perspective, the major arenas that we have to unfold while going through this particular article talks about carbon credit trading and market mechanisms, India's carbon credit trading schemes, that is CCTS schemes of 2023, voluntary versus compliance carbon market, that is VERA and gold standards. For mains perspective, this article is to be seen through the lens of ethical dimensions of carbon market and equity, India's climate diplomacy that balances growth and emission, critical view of carbon offsets projects, and community rights. This is all from my end for today's Hindu newspaper. Till we meet for the next time, take care and goodbye.